William Afton, a cold-blooded killer with a mysterious backstory, to a complete joke of a character. How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to another discussions video. Today we'll be taking a look at William Afton / Springtrap and his evolution throughout the different games. Now, I will be strictly looking at his depictions in character in the games, as I haven't really read the books, and I'm going to wait on a movie breakdown since I want to do a whole movie review at some point. So we'll be strictly looking at his character in the games. Now, this video is going to be a bit different since I'm just going to be covering his appearance and mostly character / personality changes throughout the games. So it is going to be a little bit of a shorter one and more just straight to the point rather than any sort of major discussion on details or theory type video. It's just going to be listing some facts and just some basic information about him changing throughout each of the main games. Now, just before we begin, if I end up missing any details or I get something wrong or something like that, just be sure to leave a comment to let me know, because I'm not perfect and I'm not going to be able to get everything. So if I miss something, just let me know in the comments, because I'd love to know what I missed or what I got wrong. Anyway, with that, let's just jump right into the video, starting with the very first game in the franchise. Five Nights at Freddy's, or FNAF 1, doesn't really offer much about Afton at this point, and the only real information we get is from the missing children's incident posters that occasionally will show up. This does give us a little bit of info, talking about how an employee dressed up in a mascot costume and lured children to a room in the back. It doesn't give us too much, but it does arguably give us the first bit of super important information, and that's the fact that he dressed up in a mascot costume. That's really about it for FNAF 1 though. There's not any appearances, and there's not really a whole lot of info that we get on like the story or characters. So with that, let's just get into the next game where we actually get his first appearance twice. In FNAF 2, we get to see the introduction of the popular purple guy sprites through the Take Cake and Foxy Go 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 minigames. In the Take Cake minigame, we actually get to witness one of Afton's first kills, which we would later see again in Pizza Sim. And in Foxy Go Go Go, this shows us the actual missing children's incident, also telling us that purple guy had an additional 5 victims. But not only do we get more on what exactly Afton did and more about the story, we also get to learn more about Afton himself. It is largely agreed that Afton worked at the FNAF 2 location for at least a little bit of time, and we also know that he probably did kill somebody else there as well, as we can gather from the Night 6 phone call.
Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it. Now none of them are acting right.
Here, we get to learn a little bit more about the mascot costume mentioned in FNAF 1, learning that it was a spare yellow one that was on hand at the location. Now, at this time, we only knew about 2 yellow suits, kind of. The only yellow animatronics that existed were Chica and Golden Freddy / Fredbear. And out of those two, Fredbear was the most obvious choice for the spare suit. This would also start to lead into more theories about what FNAF 3 was going to be about. There were countless theories about what FNAF 3 was going to be about before the release of the main trailer. What we did know is that this game was finally going to introduce the main killer as an actual villain in the games and not just a background character, meaning we would get to know more about this mysterious person. With some of the early teasers, many thought that it could be a Fredbear game, although this would be proven wrong with the release of the trailer, introducing the most iconic villain design in the entire franchise, Springtrap. When the game released, we got to see Springtrap up close and personal, and it is definitely one of the best designs in the entire franchise. I'm not going to go into too much detail about Springtrap and his design because I've already talked about it in countless other discussion videos that I've made. So if you want to get my opinion on that, you can go check out some of those other ones. But what I will say is that this is an awesome design for a character. The mix of weird organic elements alongside the withered and battered suit design just looks absolutely amazing. But Springtrap isn't the only thing that gets introduced in this game, as we get to see more about Afton himself. Now what we do see is William hiding or camping out inside of an old Freddy's location. It looks like the FNAF 1 location, however there are some things that make it seem like it's not. I'm not going to get into that in this video, but what we do know is that he was hiding out in a Freddy's location, dismantling the old animatronics. Now at that time we didn't know why. Later it would be determined that he was trying to gather remnant, but I'm not going to get into that too much right now. But we know that he dismantles the old animatronics, and then eventually he ends up getting haunted by the spirits of the kids that he killed, and eventually that ends up with him hiding in his spring body suit, getting spring locked, and ending up becoming Springtrap. Even though we learn a lot more about his character and even get introduced to him as an actual character in the games that we have to go up against, we still didn't know that much about him. At this time, we didn't know that he was named Afton, and we really didn't know much about what he was doing aside from the fact that he was just a killer. But with such a large amount of new information about the killer slash Springtrap, maybe FNAF 4 would give us more information about just exactly who this person is. We see him standing in the background. He helps somebody put on a spring Bonnie costume at Fredbear's, and that's really about it. He's like not even in the game at all, and there's like nothing new about him. Sister location gives us a ton of new information about William, actually introducing his name.
Those aren't the design choices we were curious about, Mr. Afton.
And giving us a lot more of his connections throughout the other games, such as the Fredbear plush, as well as the cameras looking into the FNAF 4 bedroom, which connects Afton to that location, thus giving us the information that the crying child is likely Afton's son, which we now know that he is, as well as introducing us to another one of Afton's kids, Elizabeth, who would go on to become Circus Baby. We know that Afton alone created this location and Circus Baby's rentals, as well as single-handedly designing all of the Funtime animatronics, which does start to bring up the fact that Afton is no longer some cold-blooded killer, but in fact some scientist bent on immortality. I'll talk more about that later on in the video, but it is the beginning of a shift from a mysterious like psychopath to just some crazy mad scientist kind of guy, which is an interesting turn. But what was probably the craziest thing to come out of Sister Location regarding William Afton slash Springtrap is the small glimpse of Dark Springtrap that we see at the end cutscene after the custom night is beat, where we get to see that he in fact survived the FNAF 3 fire, which we kind of suspected, but it then gets confirmed and sets up that Springtrap would return in the next game in the franchise. Pizzeria Simulator introduces us to probably what is the most controversial slash hated animatronic character design in the entire franchise, that being Scraptrap. I'm not going to go too much into that design either, since I have an entire video already dedicated to Scraptrap. So if you want to know my opinion about that, just go check out that video. but it is definitely a downgrade in design and a bit of a disappointment compared to Springtrap's design, especially with the fact that the original Spring Bonnie design can be seen in the Fruity Maze minigame, where he's standing behind Susie in like a really creepy kind of scene. But it is the original Spring Bonnie design, which means that both designs existed, which means Scraptrap's a different design. But again, I'm not going to get too much into that. This game also shows us a kind of retelling of the Take Cake minigame from FNAF 2, where we get to see Charlotte stuck outside of the restaurant, and we get to see the aftermath of Afton's actions when the puppet is able to get outside and find her lying in the alleyway. All in all, there is a heavy presence of Afton in this game. However, it's a lot more of a downgrade than any time that we've seen him before, since we don't really get to see Afton himself, and rather we get to see Scraptrap, who is a much less intimidating version of any of Afton's former designs. Now, that's sort of where I'm going to wrap up for the Scott games. Ultimate Custom Night, I'll just touch on for a second. It is absolutely Afton getting tormented and not being allowed to move on by the vengeful spirit, and that's really like all we can get out of that game in terms of Afton related content, so that's why I'm not going to go into it for too much detail. But so the end of the Scott games is sort of the end of Afton, but I do want to touch on the games afterwards, with games like Help Wanted and Security Breach. So I do want to just touch on those games for a minute. So I'm not going to go into a crazy amount of detail or discussion about Help Wanted, Security Breach, stuff like that, since I've already kind of talked about Afton and Glitch Trap and stuff like that in another discussions video. But I did just want to bring it up here to kind of clarify a few things from that video. So in Help Wanted, we get introduced to Glitch Trap, which at the time we all thought was somehow Afton's spirit got into this VR game and is trying to corrupt everybody's minds and essentially continue to be immortal just through other people, which with the information we were given at that time made sense. But looking back on it, it does make a lot more sense that it is the Mimic program, which I do believe. And I know that the thumbnail has Glitch Trap and I'm talking about Springtrap, but you know, it looks good, whatever. But Glitch Trap is the Mimic 01 program pretending to be Afton, and I do think that ties into Security Breach as well, because I think that the Burn Trap body, at least, is Afton's body rebuilt after the Pizza Sim fire, but I don't think that it's ever possessed by Afton. Like, Afton is just gone. He's dead. He's actually dead. He's long gone. But I think it's Glitch Trap's goal to try to rebuild, quote unquote, his body / Afton's body so that he can take it over and pretend to be Afton again. And so that's just sort of a brief rundown of that idea. So Glitch Trap is not Afton. He is the Mimic. But Afton's body does carry on after Pizza Sim being the Burn Trap body, because that just makes the most sense to me. I don't get how it could be anybody else. And if you want more discussion about that, just go check out my other video on it, because I go into a lot more detail there. Anyways, I did just want to bring up this stuff because I felt it was appropriate to bring up here, and I know some of you guys wanted me to clarify that from that previous discussion video. So there we go. So just as like closing thoughts / a kind of summary, I think that the evolution of William Afton throughout the games going from a cold-blooded, mysterious killer in the first 4 games, I guess first 3 games technically, where he is shown as somebody who clearly works at the location, somebody who kind of doesn't really care about what people see, since in one of the other mini games in FNAF 2, we see that there's just bodies strung about the Freddy's location. So clearly he doesn't really care all that much. And we kind of see that he is just some random cold-blooded killer. And it's actually really cool because it's just more realistic that way. However, after Sister Location, he just devolves from some cold-blooded killer into some like psychopath scientist who has weird spirit metal that he tries to use to become immortal, even though he doesn't actually do that. And he makes robots to capture kids. And it's just weird and such a strange turn from more realistic elements to some very out there and strange stuff. And I guess you can kind of talk about that as in FNAF as a whole, but it is very prevalent in William Afton because he goes from super cool to just kind of like lame and a joke and not really all that like scary as a character, especially since the fact that he does like always come back. And it's just kind of whatever. I am glad that he is finally dead though. At least I'm assuming he's finally dead, since we don't really actually see him after Help Wanted, except for his body. But that's really all we see. So I think he's finally dead. Thank goodness. He won't be coming back, hopefully, unless there's like a prequel game. Then he will probably come back. And maybe we'll get more in the Into the Pit game. I don't think that's too much about Afton himself, but you know, maybe we'll get in more information from there. Now, I know this video was a bit of a shorter one, more straight to the point, and there's not really a whole lot of like hard discussion here, but I still thought it was a good one to make, and I think it kind of gets the point across about how Afton has kind of had waves of like he shows up in games and then he's not, and then he's in a bunch of games and then he's not, and how he's just sort of evolved from being mysterious and cool to being completely random and a joke. But that is going to be it for the video today. Stay tuned for a poll that's going to be coming up later today about the new topic that you guys want me to cover for the next video. So stay tuned for that. But anyway, Shameless Plugs, go check them out, linked in the description below. Be sure to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Leave a comment if I missed anything, or if you want to say anything, or have any other theories or ideas that you want me to do for another discussions video. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on if you want to see more content like this. I thank you all for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this brief but important look at Afton throughout the games. And as always, remember, I always come back. See you next time.